My name is Sommer, and I'm the Chief Medical Officer for the FCB Health Network of Agencies. Our guest today is Dr. Jonathan Villena-Vargas. Dr. Villena, thank you so much for joining us today. What do you feel are some of the biggest misconceptions about representation in clinical trials?
The biggest misconceptions, I think, are that, certain groups are completely opposed to it. So that doesn't necessarily mean that these groups are completely against it. So I think that's a big misconception. Also, the fact that, if you don't speak the language, you can't, your patient's not going to get in, their patient's not going to listen to you. I think that's another one.
Definitely agree with you on those points about making the connection, not making any assumptions, not bringing any implicit bias to the situation, and assuming that different groups will not be interested, because the data does not support that. The data certainly supports that if patients are asked, and if they're asked in an appropriate, culturally competent manner, they are going to be interested in participating in clinical trials.
When and where did you become aware of racial disparities in clinical trials?
So it goes back a few years, probably 2018, again, as part of what my job entails, going over clinical data. It became apparent to me that our clinical trials were not very balanced and did not at all represent the incidence and mortality rates. And then I started doing a little bit more research and found that in 2019, the FDA actually put out general guidance to help drug sponsors and people who run clinical trials to have more diversity within their populations. So it's definitely something that has been discussed in academic circles, but we felt like we needed to push it further and out of just being an academic conversation and get the public involved. What are some of the things you or your research organization are doing to address this issue?
It's really, a lot of this is really about just education, just getting the word out and saying, hey, this is not an experiment on somebody. This is just, hey, this is a new drug. This is a new novel way of treating somebody, or we want to study this certain cancer in a certain way. And, you can help us a lot. And not only that, you can help yourself by potentially having something that's very new and very effective.
How could we bring the medical, scientific, and patient advocacy communities together to address some of these issues?
Whenever we come up with any sort of trial or any sort of project or anything we want to move forward, I think that, we're so caught up in how to design it and saying we need this many patients, the statistical aspect of it, the money behind it, et cetera, et cetera. But, what we have to do really is get together as a group and say, hey, we have to make sure that this clinical trial represents the population at large. So if you're designing a clinical trial and you're saying, I'm going to target that mutation, and everybody in your trial is white or Caucasian, or everybody in your trial is Asian, they're going to have vastly different results just because this mutation exists differently. So you have to kind of keep that in mind every time you're designing something. And I think that's the key, because that involves not just the doctor, but it involves the scientists, it involves the pharmaceutical companies, it involves, everybody out there. So why do you, Summer, think it's important for everybody from all disciplines to kind of get together and address this issue together?
I think it's important for us to get together and discuss it, because everyone currently is discussing it potentially in silos. We can all have a much greater impact if we share resources and come together to try to solve the problems. It's about logistics, it's about culture, it's about access, it's about implicit bias, it's about socioeconomic status. It's going to take all of us to come together to make sure that we can get patients appropriately enrolled in clinical trials. You mentioned about clinical trial design, and I think it's important to bring that up and talk about the fact that inclusion criteria can also be very limiting. So some of these patient populations may have comorbidities, and the way the trial is designed, it might immediately exclude them. And so we want to make sure that the trials are designed in a way to capture a representative patient population. So what would you say to members of the public who want to get involved in this cause?
I think that, just being educated about it, and it's spreading the word basically. So, if you have somebody that you say, hey, you just got diagnosed with breast cancer, have you looked at clinical trials? Have you looked at different places, and do they offer second opinions, and exactly what are they treating and how are they treating it? It's really about education. So I think, getting involved with your specific doctor, your specific hospital, your specific community, especially if you're a survivor of something, and just educating people on that, I think that goes a long way.
Dr. Villena, thank you so much for joining us today. It's been a pleasure discussing these topics with you.
Pleasure's all mine. Thank you so much for the invitation. It's been great.
I want to thank our viewers today. Please like and subscribe to our channel and watch for the next session coming soon. Demand change, take action, sign the petition. Let's not wait to save lives from cancer. Join us. Visit clinicalequality.com.